Title of this video is It's Sifu, not Sensei. So this video is for educational purposes. This is a common challenge that I go through all the time. Owning a martial arts school, specifically a Chinese martial arts school or a Chinese American martial arts school over here in Chicago. There's a lot of people, children that might walk by and say, call me a sensei, or they might call the place, they might say karate, and they don't understand, and I think people need to be properly educated in what's going on within the martial arts, and that's part of why I'm here. There's just not a lot of Chinese martial art teachers out there. There's a lot of Korean martial art teachers, well, not a lot, but there's more Korean martial art teachers and more Japanese martial art teachers than there are Chinese martial art teachers in America. So sensei is Japanese for martial arts teacher. Sifu is the Chinese way of saying teacher father, for basically is the martial arts teacher for the Chinese. So my background is from China. My background is the Chinese culture. That's why it's improper for people to say that I'm a sensei. It's proper for them to say Sifu. So it's kind of just educational thing, that people have to realize, and if it's not with martial arts and your culture is Chinese, it's improper for people to say that you're Japanese, and if it's vice versa. If you're Japanese and then people are calling you, saying that you're Chinese, that's not proper. So we live in a world of labels, and it's important that we use these labels properly. You can't put two black people next to each other and then call them the same thing, just because they're black. That's not right. If one person's name's Michael Jordan and another person's name's Kobe Bryant, even though they're both great at basketball and they're both black, it doesn't mean that you're gonna call Kobe Bryant Jordan and you call Jordan Kobe Bryant because they're black and they both play basketball and they're both good. I mean, that's not right. They have names for a reason. So Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant is Kobe Bryant. When you look at it on a larger scale, don't call a Chinese person Japanese and don't call a Japanese person Chinese. In a way, especially if you're doing it purposefully, it's very disrespectful. If you're doing it because out of ignorance, then you need to educate yourself, because people can look at that very offensively. I even have people that might have been with me for 3 years and then they still call my place a dojo. That's not proper. Dojo is the Japanese way of saying the martial arts school. Kun, K-W-O-O-N, is the Chinese way of saying it. So they should be calling the training facility a kun, not a dojo. They should be addressing me as Sifu, not sensei. And even educating myself, I'm not familiar with what the martial art title is for the Korean martial art. So what I went on Google myself, I typed it in, and it says, what is the name of a Taekwondo teacher? It says sensei is a Japanese word for teacher. Taekwondo instructors are called sabum. So in Taekwondo they call them sabum. In the Chinese they call them Sifu. In the Japanese they call them sensei. So people need to educate themselves with that, and especially if you practice the martial arts, no matter what you practice, you should educate yourself, and use the proper titles, use the proper labels. That's what we need to do, and even every single martial art, whatever culture that you're representing, they have their own uniforms. The Chinese have their traditional outfits, the Japanese have theirs, and then the Korean have theirs. And the Japanese have those kimonos, they have like those uniforms that are very distinctly different than the Chinese. You know, Japanese and the Koreans are known to use a lot of belt systems, but the Chinese, they're not known for that. And just recently, some of these schools might have implemented sashes, but really the Chinese martial arts is different than the Japanese martial arts, and the Korean martial arts. They're all different, and we need to appreciate these differences and not say that they're all the same, because they're not. You know, like people might say, "Oh, they all look the same." You know, that's like a very racial and discriminating comment. That Chinese people look the same, Japanese people look the same, Korean people look the same, Thai people look the same. That's based out of miseducation and ignorance, and it's very disrespectful. So I think it's very important for people to educate themselves and know that the Chinese and the Japanese and the Korean and the Thai are not the same. They don't speak the same. Their writing systems are different. If you pay attention, they don't look the same. And all their martial arts are very different too. And it's like the same. It's as ignorant as somebody saying that Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan look the same, and they are the same. They're not the same. Their names are different. They play different. They're different people. You know, they people need to respect these differences, and don't just just either intentionally or unintentionally falsely label or address people, by the wrong titles and the wrong labels. If anything, don't say anything at all, or ask them, what do you prefer for me to address you by? But addressing a Sifu and calling him a Sensei is not respectful. And calling somebody a Sifu that's a Sensei is not respectful. If you look into the history of what actually happened, between these countries, then you might start to understand why, certain things are the way that they are, and why certain cultures or groups of people might not get along, why certain countries might not get along. Like even right now, President Trump is, kind of bumping heads with some of the people, with the president of China, because of economic reasons, and back in World War II there was conflict between Japan and America. Look up on the Pearl Harbor and you see what happened. Look up on the atomic bombs that America dropped in Japan and see what happened. Read up and research on the rape of Nanking. What did the Japanese soldiers do to the Chinese people during that time? Look up between what happened with the slavery. Between what happened, in America, how America was actually founded, and how they brought over slaves from Africa. If you look into these histories, you'll understand, like, you might start to understand why there might be some tension between groups of people. And understand why we have all these labels. Why do we call somebody a Sifu, Sensei, Sabum? Like, why do we have all these different labels? We have these labels for a reason. Even when you go out there and you eat food, there's restaurants still say that they have Japanese food. Some restaurants say they have Chinese food. Some people will say they have Thai food. Some will say they have Vietnamese food. There's differences. If you pay attention, there's differences. Even the Indian food, there's differences in every culture. So don't call Indian people the same as the Chinese the same as the Japanese the same as the Vietnamese the same as the Thai. They are all different. Just like we have differences here in America, there's a difference between Chicago, Atlanta, LA, New York, Texas. There's differences in every single state. No two states are going to be completely identical. So why do we have these separations in different states? Well, we chose to make these distinctions. So if we're gonna make these distinctions, then let's be very accurate with the way that we choose to use these labels, and let's educate ourselves to use these labels properly. You know, if you live in Indiana, don't say that you live in Chicago just because it's close to Chicago. You know, if you live in Wisconsin, don't say that you live in Atlanta. You know, you live in New York, don't say that you live in LA. You know, be very specific. Educate yourself and use the labels properly. So hopefully people could think about that. You know, next time you interact with anybody that practices the martial arts, and especially if you interact with anybody that teaches the martial arts, you know, don't call the person a sensei when he's a sifu, and don't say that the person practices karate when he practices kung fu. You know, because it is not the same. You know, so hopefully people could think about these things, and there'll be a little bit more respect and out there when people choose to address, you know, an instructor in the martial arts.